They weren't kings. They didn't need to be. A century ago, one family controlled 70% of the opium that moved between India and China. Their wealth rivaled European royalty. Their influence stretched from Bombay to London. And yet, today, almost no one remembers their name. They weren't erased by failure. They were erased by success. The Sassoons, the forgotten financiers of empire, built a network so vast it rewired global trade. They financed wars, reshaped economies, and became the invisible engine behind Britain's expansion in Asia. But what destroyed them wasn't rebellion or ruin. It was something far more human, the hunger to be seen. Because when the Sassoons stepped into the light, their empire began to die, and that's when others learned the lesson. Power survives not by being visible, but by becoming indispensable. This is empire economics, and tonight we uncover the dynasty history tried to erase, and the modern empires that quietly replaced it, the Rothschilds of the East. A century ago, one family controlled 70% of the opium flowing between India and China. Their wealth rivaled European royalty. Their name appeared in newspapers from London to Shanghai. Today, almost no one remembers them. The Sassoons weren't just forgotten, they were erased by their own success. In 1832, a man named David Sassoon arrived in Bombay with his family, fleeing persecution in Baghdad, where his father had served as chief treasurer to the Pasha. David brought something more valuable than gold. He brought connections, trust networks, spanning Persia and India, and an understanding of how empires really worked. Within a decade, he'd built what would become the most powerful trading dynasty Asia had ever seen. The British Empire needed opium. China's silver was draining into British coffers to pay for tea, and London wanted that silver back. Opium became the answer. But growing it in India and moving it to China required infrastructure, capital, and networks the British didn't have. David Sassoon did. He hired family members from Baghdad, positioned them across India, Burma, Malaya, and eventually China. Each city became a node in a machine that would reshape Asian commerce. By the 1860s, David Sassoon and company didn't just participate in the opium trade, they dominated it. While competitors bought from middlemen, Sassoon agents purchased crops directly from Indian farmers before harvest, undercutting everyone else. The strategy was brilliant and brutal. 70% of all Indian opium moving to China passed through Sassoon hands. Picture Shanghai's waterfront in 1870. Sassoon House rises along the Bund, a landmark visible from every approach to the city. Inside, transactions worth fortunes happen daily. Cotton, silk, silver, insurance contracts, banking arrangements. The Sassoons had diversified beyond opium into every profitable corner of Asian trade. In Bombay, they built the first commercial wet docks in Western India, transforming how goods moved in and out of the subcontinent. They established textile mills, invested in real estate from Hong Kong to Canton, and became founding members of the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. But here's what made them different from typical merchant families. David Sassoon wasn't building a business. He was building an empire designed to outlast him. He fathered 14 children across 2 marriages, and each one became a piece in his commercial network. When he moved the company headquarters from Bombay to London in 1872, it wasn't retreat. It was expansion, positioning the family closer to capital markets and information flows that controlled global trade. The Sassoons became something unprecedented. A Jewish family from Baghdad, operating across the British Empire, welcomed into aristocratic circles at a time when Jews faced exclusion across Europe. The Prince of Wales befriended them. They collected art, rare manuscripts, racehorses. Titles followed, parliament seats. Their parties filled society pages. And that's exactly where the problem started. Wealth doesn't destroy dynasties. Distraction does. As the next generation inherited power, something shifted. The meticulous attention David had paid to trade routes and commodity flows gave way to social ambition. 2 of his sons disagreed over strategy, splitting the business. But the real killer wasn't the split. It was the seduction of acceptance. Being invited into British high society meant everything to a family that had fled persecution. So they pursued it, married into prominent non-Jewish families, spent fortunes entertaining aristocrats. The business that generated their wealth became secondary to maintaining their status. By the 1920s, when Victor Sassoon took control of the Shanghai operations, the DNA that made the family successful had mutated. Victor worked, certainly, but his lifestyle became a blend of business and endless social commitments. He opened cosmopolitan hotels and nightclubs in Shanghai, traveled constantly, entertained lavishly. The company drifted while he played host to the world. Then came the miscalculation that finished them. In 1937, Japan invaded Shanghai. Victor Sassoon, unlike the Kadoorie family, who also built fortunes in Asia, made a fatal assumption. He moved wealth and operations from India to Shanghai, betting Japan would never fully attack. He was wrong. When the Chinese Communist Party won the Civil War in 1949, they seized everything. The Sassoon Empire, built over a century, collapsed in a decade. But the story doesn't end there. One branch survived. Elias Sassoon, born in Aleppo in 1926, joined the family business in 1946, when they still held interests in Burma Oil, Turkish Petroleum, Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, textiles and cotton exports. In 1947, Elias focused on three sectors just beginning to explode: oil exploration across the Middle East, shipping and banking. While the Shanghai branch crumbled, Elias quietly built a fund that would eventually hold positions in BHP, American Express, General Motors, Wells Fargo, HSBC, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, luxury brands like Fendi and Giorgio Armani, and technology companies like Sun Microsystems. By the time of his death in 2010, rumors placed the Sassoon Family Continuation Trust's assets under management above $100 billion. Today, Sassoon & Company operates as a private equity and investment banking firm. They still exist. You just don't hear about them anymore. That's the pattern. Real power doesn't announce itself. The Sassoons learned what the Rothschilds understood in Europe. Visibility invites vulnerability. Modern dynasties took note. The Tata family in India built an empire spanning steel, automobiles, hotels, telecommunications, and more, maintaining influence while embedding themselves in national identity. Jamsetji Tata founded what became Tata Steel in 1907, created hydroelectric systems, and established institutions that shaped India's industrialization. Today, Tata Group companies have a combined market cap exceeding $430 billion, with 65% owned by charitable trusts bearing the family name. Or consider Li Ka-shing, who arrived in Hong Kong as a 12-year-old refugee in 1940, started working 16-hour days in a plastics factory at 14, and by 22 had started his own manufacturing business with $6,500 in savings and family loans. By the late 1970s, he was Hong Kong's leading property developer. In 1979, he became the first Chinese businessman to acquire a major British trading house, buying Hutchison Whampoa. Transportation, real estate, telecommunications, retail, his empire now touches energy. His net worth sits around $37 billion, but his actual influence on Hong Kong's economy is incalculable. Then there's the Ambani family, whose Reliance Industries generates $90 billion in annual revenue with nearly 200,000 employees. Mukesh Ambani transformed his father's petrochemical business into a digital revolution through Reliance Jio, fundamentally reshaping India's internet access and telecommunications. The Ambanis are now worth more than twice Asia's second richest family. They don't just do business in India, they shape its economic policy and consumer culture. These families operate differently than the Sassoons did at their peak. They learned from the fall. They diversify not just across industries, but across generations, balancing public presence with private control. They embed themselves in national infrastructure, making their success inseparable from their country's progress. And they understand something the Sassoons forgot. Attention is expensive. The Rothschilds of the East aren't gone. They evolved. Some vanished from public view entirely while maintaining financial power. Others became so integrated into national identity that criticizing them feels like criticizing the country itself. The mechanisms changed. The principle didn't. Control the infrastructure, the capital flows, the networks that make modern life possible, and you don't need publicity. You become invisible necessity. What protected the Sassoons for a century wasn't just their wealth, it was their utility to the British Empire. When that utility ended and their focus shifted to social status over strategic value, collapse followed quickly. The families that survived understood this. They made themselves indispensable not to empires, but to nations, economies, technological progress. They became the foundation, not the decoration. History doesn't repeat, but the patterns persist. Dynasties that prioritize appearance over function fade. Those that embed themselves in essential systems endure. The Sassoons built an empire and then forgot how to maintain it. Their successors remembered. They're still here. You're just not looking in the right places.